All right, good afternoon or good morning for those of you on the West Coast. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Integrating Your ArcGIS Online Apps with IBM Maximo using GeoWorx Sync. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lindsay Sutherland Zaharia, and I'll be the moderator today. We're so glad that you joined us to hear more about our GeoWorx Sync solutions and how it can help you easily integrate your ArcGIS Online apps and Maximo Spatial. I'd also like to introduce Sean Gravener, who's joining us to present today. Sean has over 18 years of GIS experience, with the last 10 years spent supporting the utility and pipeline industries. So thanks for joining us today, Sean.
All right, great. Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you, everyone, for attending our session today. So we're going to start off really kind of focusing on the theme of this webinar, right? And that's really kind of integrating that IBM and Maximo databases by using the technologies available through Esri, and that being ArcGIS Online and the associated applications. So first and foremost, Nexus, for those who aren't familiar with our organization, is that we are a business that's been around for 7 years, and we're absolutely 100% dedicated to integration between enterprise systems and GIS technologies, and specifically Esri, right? We are an Esri business partner. We are an IBM business partner, and that's what our core focus is. We're absolutely focused on that 100%, and we offer end-to-end subject matter expertise as well as technologies that you'll see today through this presentation. So when we look at these respective technologies, both Esri and IBM Max, fundamentally they're different databases, and they're different databases for very good reasons, because Esri has a data model. It does things in its tool set very well associated with spatial data. And IBM, on the other side, is a separate database because it does things very well. It has a separate data model associated with preventative maintenance, asset management, workflow, lifecycle, all of that sort of things, right? And so our goal within Nexus, and specifically with the technology that we'll talk about today, GeoWorx Sync, is to bridge those technologies, right? There's multiple options out there. Some people try to conquer this with custom services. Some people try to conquer it with homegrown services. We're here to provide a technology, a proven technology, that has a product that has a life cycle, has annual maintenance and support, and it has R&D that's reinvested back into technology. We can support the latest technologies from Esri as well as the latest from Maximo. So everyone on the phone here today is invested in IBM Maximo and is invested in Esri, right, at some level. And so if you've been around the conference circuit with Esri, if you've spoken with your Esri account manager, you've likely seen a diagram very similar to this. And we're going to talk a bit about this, right? We're going to talk about that server at the bottom there, which is that geo database, which is serving up content, right? Oftentimes in map services and feature services, and really data that is pushed into ArcGIS Online or Portal, right? Online being the cloud option, Portal being that on-premise option. And you have multiple stakeholders in your organization at the desktop level that are editing this data day in and day out. You have folks that are using web applications, perhaps not power users. They just need to view, query, and analyze some data. And then you got a field force that can leverage various devices and form factors, all synchronized and communicating with this ArcGIS Online technology. And at Nexus, as I stated, we're an Esri partner, we're an IBM partner. We strive to ensure that our technology support this architecture as well. So just a quick reminder that in the upper left, we've got GeoWorx Sketch, which is a lightweight redlining and field sketch application that can be launched from a third-party host, and it writes back into ArcMap, and there's an ArcMap tool to process those red lines. We have GeoWorx Office, which is a widget that can be embedded inside of the Esri web app builder, combined with any other widget in that library, and can be deployed leveraging ArcGIS Online web maps and content to view, query, filter, create asset and work order information from that web environment. And then, of course, below we have GeoWorx Sync, which is really the theme of today's presentation. So we'll start off, why ArcGIS Online? We've been hearing about this for at least 3 years now, and it certainly has gone through an evolution. But obviously, Esri has created this platform, promoted a collaborative approach across your organization, a method, a means to share data, disseminate data to a larger audience, regardless if they're a power user in GIS is editing, or someone that just needs, again, to view, query, and see this information. It also is made available different apps. You've got web applications, you've got the operations dashboard, you've got the web app builder, but then you've got various mobile applications that we'll talk about in a couple of minutes here that make utilizing this data very easy. So the overarching goal is to promote a level of operational awareness of your assets, whether you're a gas utility, water organization, local government, electric utility. Everyone's got assets at some level, and again, the objective here is to provide an awareness, provide the ease of viewing and accessing and perhaps even updating and creating asset information from a GIS environment. So it really enables users to engage with customers. The customers either being colleagues within your own organizations that you can share content with and provide maps to, or customers that are in your service territory, right? A lot of times folks are creating web maps and sharing that information either through the Esri's Open Data Source website or on your own website to educate and inform your customers. So the goal with GeoNexus when we think about ArcGIS Online, because again, it's opening up the access to data to multiple stakeholders, is that we want to again promote data integrity. Take this opportunity to promote data integrity and to ensure that whether you're a GIS user or whether you're a Maximo user, that the data that you're going to utilize with ArcGIS Online and visualize can be one and the same. It can come from one source and be updated in another, right? We're seeking and striving to promote data integrity, which is a theme that we're going to talk about through this presentation. So when we look at this in the realm of the back and forth and the synchronization, right, there's a very simple approach that we can just do and try to accomplish, and that's synchronizing assets. That's the easiest thing to do would be synchronizing assets. But it goes beyond that, right? I talked about the data integrity, and it's more important than just synchronizing assets. So when we look on the left-hand side, within Esri, we can view those assets. We can see them spatially on the map. Through the use of applications like Collector, you can actually go in and people can create and update data, right? Update asset information using these applications that Esri has. All of that in a case to promote work orders, right? Work order management. What if defects are created or identified or redlined within the GIS environment? How do we get that information over to Maximo and make sure that we can trigger work orders and follow up and execute them? And then again, on the Maximo side, if we're doing things on GIS, we want to make sure that those assets are up to date. But again, there's more synchronization. We want to know what happened. What happened on this creates, updates, deletes, all these other things that are happening day in and day out. So we're going to go ahead and help track those assets, promote maintenance management to ensure that you've got the most accurate data in terms of supporting your assets and preventative maintenance schedules, and then really make use of business intelligence, make good decisions with good data, which is really kind of the key for synchronizing data as well as reporting on it. Let's keep things current, let's keep things up to date, but again, having that knowledge and understanding what happened, what changed yesterday, what changed today, who changed it, what was the old value, what was the new value, giving you that history, that perspective of what's going on with the system day in and day out, rather than just shoving data in and committing it, right? We want to make sure you're aware of what's happening so you can make good decisions and understand where to invest your dollars. So look right here, and we'll focus on the mobile apps for this slide right here. And with the evolution of ArcGIS Online, right, Esri has invested and provided these different applications which are free, and you make use of the content. So they've got Navigator, right, for navigating to and from locations. They've introduced Operations Dashboard, which provides great business intelligence on top of your data in the GIS environment. But really the one that we're going to focus on is Collector, which is a very simple tool, but it does a very powerful task, right? And that's making sure that folks can view, query, update information from a mobile application directly back to the GIS. And so that's what I'll be using in my present today is Collector to show how we can utilize that as well as communicate with ArcGIS Online through this integration process.
All right, so here we're going to have our first poll question to see who out there is already using ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS for Portal. So it looks like most everyone has voted, and it looks like a lot of you are already using ArcGIS Online. So this integration could be really important to your organization. Thank you.
All right, cool. Yeah, very interesting. Obviously with the Esri licenses anymore, you get entitlements to ArcGIS Online. Some organizations have access to it and they don't know, but also others have invested with Portal, and that's that on-premise option. So again, we support both technologies with our synchronization tool that we're going to show today. So when we look at this collector to Maximo workflow in a simplified, streamlined view, this is kind of what we see, right? We have folks in the field that have access to this collector application on different devices and form factors, assuming we have some level of connectivity. People can be creating and updating asset information through inspections or through general observations and pushing that through ArcGIS Online. But as you know, right, this data, it ends at the geodatabase. It doesn't make its way across to Maximo. That collector only goes right to the geodatabase. That's really kind of that gap within this workflow, this process of how do you go through and how do you get that data into Maximo and back forth and Maximo back to Esri, because of course things are happening in the Maximo side that are changing assets and updating assets. So we want to make sure that the folks in the field or across your organization have the same data as well. So when we look at this problem, the potential that we have here is we want to share this story, right? We've worked with various organizations across the world. We've got over 40 customers using GeoWorx Sync today in different capacities. And one organization that we recently worked with took their data set from Maximo and their data set from GIS. It was electric utility for mission critical assets, right? You're thinking about power transformers and substations. And they took this data to the field and ground proofed it, and there was only 10% accuracy between that data, all right? So you can see very easily the criticality of this, the need for data integrity. And really what we're able to do through our synchronization tool is, again, synchronizing is the easy part, but we generate reports. We are able to educate customers and identify what are the duplicates, discrepancies, errors, orphans, what's happening on create, update, delete. And we're able to educate and inform this organization and other customers to understand how their data is, what's the quality of their data. They know where to invest to clean this up, to ultimately, again, drive business decisions to ensure that they are investing their dollars in the assets that need to be repaired and maintained, right? So this is pretty important. This is pretty I don't know, overwhelming, I guess it could be. And so what I'd like for you to think about is, as we go through this demonstration, is what's the confidence? What's the high level of confidence that you have in terms of your data? Is your asset data reliable? Are you confident that you know that what I'm seeing in GIS is identical to what's inside of Maximo? Because again, there's people on either side of those databases that are doing tasks associated with their respective jobs that are changing values that could potentially create conflicts, discrepancies, and errors, and all this other information. So a couple of use cases to think about too as we move forward. One of them being the most probably the logical, the first one right there, is essentially that there are organizations today that are still using a paper process workflow. We see that with customers that are still investing and buying GeoWorx Sync, right? They're trying to improve efficiency and the process and the timeliness of being able to push data in. And a lot of times we see that people are taking construction jobs or jobs from engineering, going to GIS, updating that in paper, pushing that over to the other department, and they're updating this information in Maximo to ensure that things are identical. So really through a workflow such as use of collector, it can automate that process. It can be written directly into GIS, and GeoWorx Sync can go through that process and go ahead and push and update data on either side, right? Obviously, they're creating efficiency. The second one is really kind of, I think, more interesting, right? And this is a real use case with one of our customers in the fact that we're using our technology to improve emergency response, right? There's a situation where fire departments are going out and are responding to fires, only to find that hydrants are vandalized or damaged or not operational. So it's impacting the timeliness and response and ultimately the safety of the citizens, right? So through the use of collector, they're able to go out, identify and collect and report on which hydrants are damaged or defective, which we can go through and synchronize that and trigger work orders that can ultimately go through the process, replace those hydrants. It's a new asset. That information gets synced back to GIS. And at the back end, the web maps, the applications that the firefighters are using in their trucks are current and up to date. So when they go to a hydrant, they can expect it to be accessible and operable. So just two use cases I think are very relevant to this discussion. All right, so what is GeoWorx Sync, right? As we stated up front, it's a product. That's what we focus on. It's a product. There's nothing custom about this. None of our customers have a one-off, right? Everyone has access to the same technology. When we look at this, it has a UI, there's rules, there's configuration, there's logic. We can go through complicated scenarios and do calculations on the fly during the synchronization process. A lot of our customers, the majority of them, are doing bidirectional synchronization. Oftentimes we see that GIS is that system of record, and we're making sure that Maximo is up to date. However, every customer that we work with is different. Everyone has different use cases, and we can apply this technology to various industries. So when we look at GeoWorx Sync on the bottom, you kind of see more of that architectural view. We see an edit view database, which is, again, those power users are going in and editing day in, day out, reconciling and posting, doing network maintenance and management activities. A lot of times, the majority of our customers are using a published view database that's separate from the edit database, where they're publishing map services and feature services. And then we've got that Maximo database that we need to keep up to date. So in any given situation, and in my scenario right here, we typically see that our tools keeping 3 different databases up to sync, right? We're always kind of working through that process. And we've seen simpler or more complex environments as well. And GeoWorx Sync as a whole is a site license. So regardless if you have a dev environment, a test environment, a production environment, one license is applicable to all those environments. And we can simply just back up the configuration, move that file onto the next server, load it. You've got the configuration restored. And it's really kind of quite easy for management purposes. However, for the sake of this presentation, right, we're going to go through the process where I'm going to use ArcGIS Online as a hosted service. I'm not going to use that published database. I'm going to use the edit view database. I'm going to use data that's been published directly to ArcGIS Online and hosted there. That's going to be updated through Collector, and it's going to communicate with Maximo and back down to that edit view database. So we're still using 3 environments synchronized. However, the difference being that we're using hosted services within ArcGIS Online. So when we look at a new customer, when we look at a process of configuring GeoWorx Sync, we wanted to educate you and make you understand, or help you understand, what it takes to kind of get your data ready. What's a typical process for this configuration? And first and foremost is establishing a mapping, right? We need to define what is a hydrant inside of GIS and what is a hydrant inside of Maximo. We then identify the appropriate fields that need to move back and forth. Diameter, material, pressure, install date, all those kind of relevant things. And immediately what we can do with these mappings within our sync tool is we can generate reports. We can see the fundamental differences, the discrepancies between the data. So right away, without committing anything whatsoever, we can see what's wrong and help you understand what may need to be remedied to make sure your data has better integrity, right? So as we move forward, we have an option called a preview mode, right, in our tool set. And this provides a deeper level of verification where we can look at things like errors and orphans and duplicates. And in this preview mode, we're able, again, to generate a big report, thorough report of everything that we're detecting in terms of these categories right here without committing or writing to your data. So we're still just reading data. And what this allows you to do is, again, give another opportunity to look at the integrity of your data, to update that, to make sure it's clean. And what's the accuracy? We go through that process and we help organizations understand the report and what needs to be remedied. Lastly, what happens is that when we go through and we have a high level of confidence that your data is accurate, we enable full synchronization. Okay? And at this point, on a scheduled process or an on-demand need, you can go through and you can run sync. You can see this report day in and day out. Data gets pushed back and forth. And it's really just rinse and repeat. You're just doing that on a daily process, right? One more thing on the preview mode I'll point out is that this is a fantastic option that we recommend and we see customers using when they're doing things such as bulk loading data, right? If they're making any changes to schemas. You can execute this preview mode, again, without committing data to the database. Once it's committed, you're stuck with it, right? We don't ever want to just force data in there without letting you know what's happening. So we see a lot of folks using this preview mode here.
All right, so we're going to have our second full question now to see what type of integration everyone's using currently. All right, it looks like just about everyone answered the question, so we'll go ahead and finish the poll. So it looks like about 46% of you don't have integration, but you're planning to integrate in the next 6 months. And then kind of a mix of different types of integration among the rest of you.
All right. Thanks, Lindsay. So at this point, we're going to jump into the demonstration. Again, I'm going to set up a scenario in which we're going to go through. We're going to be using collector in the field. Well, that represent a field, an individual going through a process of updating and collecting data. I'm going to be using an electric data set, so you can see my use case working with some poles here. Again, collector is directly communicating to ArcGIS Online. It's going to go right to that ArcGIS Online service, and we're going to run GeoWorx Sync. You'll see that in action. Go through and how we go, and we are updating assets as well as creating assets inside of Maximo from GeoWorx Sync. So at this point, what I'll do is I'm going to come over here real quick. I am using a virtual machine right here, so I want to reinforce that GeoWorx Sync fully supports virtualized environments. Okay. Again, I'll be using kind of various technologies, but I want to get you acquainted with GeoWorx Sync first and foremost. This is the user interface. This is what it looks like. At the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a tree here. This tree represents kind of the prerequisites of how we configure this and what we need to accomplish in order to have things configured within this view. Again, this is where the different logic and elements are happening within inside of GeoWorx Sync. You'll see right away that it's fully licensed. We have a product, it's licensed, there's annual maintenance and support. We are using an Esri license just for the life cycle of the synchronization process. Once that stops, it releases that license. We're going to use a standard or an advanced license. For those of you that are ArcFM customers, we fully support ArcFM objects, right? We have 8 customers that are ArcFM users today. And if you, as you know, ArcFM has its own custom object extension on top of ArcObject. Therefore, we can execute those business rules and auto updaters in that process. Over here, we have this means to create a connection. We need to establish a connection between the GIS and Maximo. Okay, so if I come down right here, I'm going to click on this connection associated with my polls in ArcGIS Online. So we 100% support a geodatabase as a data source. We support REST feature services as a data source. And of course, today, we support ArcGIS Online as a data source. So what we're doing is we're establishing the connection to our organization. We're going in, we're using our credentials for our organization. This could be an individual user, okay, across your organization. This could be an administrator. You could create a group within ArcGIS Online if you wanted to for GeoWorx Sync. And we can define privileges and responsibilities to that one group or that one sync user. As well as we can use Open Trust Manager for certificates for a higher level of security within your data set as well, within your organization. Again, we're going to define the connection to Maximo. In this case, we really just need to know how we're going to access this data. When we synchronize, when we're reading and writing and all that, right, we're using Esri's ArcObjects, we're using Maximo Business Objects. There's nothing proprietary secret here. We're using the open APIs that are accessible to our organization as a development business. We want to ensure you that what we're using respects all the kind of industry standards in terms of product development. The next thing you'll see in terms of is value lists, right? What this represents is, in this case, it's a pole treatment type, right? Poles are treated with creosote or other materials to protect them. In the GIS, in Maximo, there might be different values. In this case, you can see at the bottom, there are different coded values associated with these. So we, in GIS, we looked at a very simple coded domain. In Maximo, it's looking at for a longer character length. So what we can do is we basically define these as well. And during the synchronization process, we can translate this data on the fly, right? So let's go here now and we'll look at data sets. And the data set in this case is not a GIS data set, but rather it's the container for our configuration. It's how we kind of manage our configuration and our rules. So what we have up here is the ability to define what the source is. Again, we establish a connection. We now need to say this is what a pole is inside of GIS, and this is what a pole is inside of Maximo. We can go through, and in this case, we're going to link them up using the MX asset num, right? It doesn't have to be that value. A lot of times, that's what people use. We can support other fields. We can support alternative fields. So if you have different links that you want to create, you can absolutely support that as a process. Additionally, what we're able to do is dig in to the next available asset number, the asset registry inside of Maximo. And we're able to identify which fields we're going to use, and ultimately, how do we want to dictate or manage the numbers. In this case, whenever we create a poll, we're going to assign a 4-character prefix. we'll start that count at 1, we'll increment it by 1, and we'll basically go up to a max number of 8 characters across that pole. So again, a way to adhere to any sort of logic that you may have or want to enforce in your organization that we can support through the synchronization process. Additionally, we can go through and we can calculate fields. We can transform and translate data on the fly. So we'll just kind of look at this. I don't have a connection in place right here, but this allows us to go in and actually come in and kind of manage data and concatenate information. So you think about in the case of a pipe, a piece of pipe, right? In GIS, I may have a material, I might have a diameter, I may have a pressure. I can concatenate those 3 values into one description and insert that into Maximo on the fly during that synchronization process. All right, down below here on the Maximo side, you can see as a data source, we fully support the hierarchy that Maximo leverages. So assets, location, service addresses, service requests, and work orders. We absolutely support all of that through the process. We absolutely support specifications as well. You'll see me using that for this presentation today. In this case, I've defined the pole as an asset. A lot of times we see people define a pole as a location, and a transformer could be an asset associated to that location. But the same things apply here in terms of how we establish our connection and our unique key field. And then really at the core of it, it's the rules, right? How do we want this data to perform? How do we want data to move from one direction to the other? All of this is defined and configured within the view right here. So in this case, I'm going to look at GIS to Maximo. It's basically creating a connection right now. And you can see at the top, we have our different rules, right? What are we going to do on create, update, delete, orphan, split? For those of you that are managing linear assets and you're splitting them, either with, say, a valve or a fuse or a switch, we have 9 different split scenarios in which we can support in terms of linear assets. Do we want to retire a number and introduce new numbers? How do you do reroutes in your pipe network, right? We can support all those different options. And then again, this is where we're going to, and we're creating the mapping between GIS and Maximo, right? So it does not need to be a one-for-one. It just basically is going across. You can see this operating field is being mapped to that status field inside of Maximo. So this is where this is happening. And we can basically go through at a data set level, as I said, enable, disable a data set any time, enable that preview mode, so we're just going through the reading process, as well as enable and disable that field. So you have an extreme diversity of flexibility here in terms of how you want to be able to manage your synchronization process. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to move this over here. I'm going to minimize my screen, and I'm going to open up my view right here, okay? As I stated, I am using Collector, right? So in this case, I have an iPad available at my hands right here. I am basically mirroring my screen through this application. And again, as I stated, we're using an electric network. So I'll just go to this bookmark right here and just kind of look at this, kind of give a better context of where we are. The blue represents overhead lines in this case. That purple dashed line represents underground cables with some meters and transformers, so we're working in a mixed area. And I'll just go one level deeper, and we'll look at this because now we can see some poles. All right. So in this case, imagine I'm a field user. I'm in the field using Collector. Of course, I could use location services. However, I work from home. I live in Colorado. It doesn't line up with my data, so I'm just going to use the map right here. We're going to go through and we're going to basically make some updates and creates, right? So first and foremost, I may want to look at this pole right here on the map. You can see that highlighted in blue and pull up this information. As I'm standing next to this pole, I observe that there's some discrepancies of what I see in the GIS data. The GIS data is telling me this is a 35-foot Class 3 pole with some creosote treatment, right? I have an issue with the height. I don't think the height is 35 feet, right? So I'm going to go in, and I'm going to create that edit, and I'll go down to that field right here, to that height field, and I know that we're going to basically continue this overhead conductor across the street, so I know that this pole is going to be 45, because that's the standard in my organization, right? Because the poles across the street, there's no conductor currently attached to them. We're expanding this out. We're extending this network out, and I need a higher conductor to kind of cross that street. So I've updated that to 45 foot right there, and I'm going in and I'm sending that update back to ArcGIS Online. Additionally, at the same point, you can see over here that we've got those 2 poles on the, or the 3 poles on the right-hand side of the road. You can see Wayman Road is running east-west on the map. I know that we're going to extend our poles east-west coming off of that intersection there. Well, I need to capture and locate a new pole. So again, I could be using my location services right here. What I'm going to do is I'll just go to this map location. I got my coordinates. What I'm going to do is I'm going to collect a new pole at this location. So we'll come in, I'll grab that new pole. You can see my attributes are empty. What I'm going to do is, again, my standard's calling me for use a 45-foot pole. So I'll just go ahead and put in 40, sorry, that's material. I'm going to use 45 material. We'll go ahead and use W for wood. That's the value inside of my GIS. My class is going to be a class 3 pole. For those who aren't familiar with that, that just basically represents the kind of the width of the pole right there. I'll go ahead and do 45 as the height. And the treatment type right here is going to be creosote. So my code in GIS calls for me to use create. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in. Of course, I could be using domains and drop down the list, and that would have made my life easier. But in this case, that's kind of how I'm utilizing this demonstration. So I'm sending that update back to ArcGIS Online. At this point, I've updated a pole, and I have created a new pole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate over here. I'll just log into Maximo real quick because it likes to time out. And now I'm looking at that web map. I'm looking at the web map that's associated with the map that I was looking inside of the collector there. So if I just do a quick pan of the map, you should be able to see some changes that are happening right here. So there we go. We saw that pole just pop up, that 45-foot class 3 pole right there. And we see this change as well. So this is being labeled based on the height and the class. If you recall before, this was a 35-foot pole. I changed that to a 45-foot to make sure I can cross the street and come down here. So again, I've made an update. I've made a create. And at this point, ArcGIS Online is representing something different than Maximo. There's a discrepancy or there's something that doesn't exist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to GeoWorx Sync. I'm going to manually start GeoWorx Sync. I could wait for the next scheduled process. However, in this case, I'm just demonstrating that I can run it on demand. And you'll get a little bit of perspective of what's happening when we go through this process of synchronizing data. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to load the configuration, and we want to validate it, right? We want to ensure that everything that I want to do in that configuration tab up here is going through that process and it's being validated, because someone could go in and change a schema. It could change a field, right, which could impact my validation. So we need to be mindful of what's happening, again, at a schema level. If I haven't said it already, our GeoWorx Sync does not require any schema changes. We use your schemas in Maximo and Esri as is. We don't introduce any custom fields whatsoever. When we go through the synchronization process, and it's already complete, what we do is we see an extract. This allows us to do that comparison to understand what is different, what has changed. So we're going to go through and we're going to detect and ensure that nothing gets by us through the synchronization process. So we've detected a change. We've basically triggered that key using that key generation logic that I showed you before. We're going to create inside of our database, basically back inside the Geo database, we're going to create that new asset because I created an ArcGIS Online first, and then we're actually going to create it inside of Maximo. So we've got ArcGIS Online, Geo database, and Maximo, the three things that we're going through. We're going to make sure that we're keeping the history up to date. The asset registry, we want to understand and make sure that we're keeping those things up to date in terms of how we synchronize. And then lastly, I'll just point this out, as I actually have an orphan. Through my practice, through my prep for this, I created an orphan inside of this database, and just wanted to point that out as well. Now, at any point during the synchronization process, when this runs, it will go through and it will trigger a report. That report can be emailed to an administrator. This list gives me a full history or an audit of when a synchronization was last executed. It can be emailed to them, but I can also go back in here and review this. This is my full synchronization report where we quantify the time, the duration, the number of assets that you're synchronizing. And on that left-hand side, these are all the things that we are reporting with inside GeoWorx Sync. So again, think about going back to that confidence in your data, that reliability, that data integrity. This is where we're going to, and we're promoting that level of awareness. We're giving you the insight as what is happening on a create, on an update. Are we detecting discrepancies? Again, we're not just forcing data to be written to a database without your knowledge. We've talked to various customers that have different processes for synchronization, and a week goes by, or 2 weeks, or a month, and all of a sudden, they don't have any insight into the data, but they know something's changed because there's an error somewhere, there's a discrepancy. We're giving you that opportunity to detect that up front. When we go through this, I did a very simple edit. I did a create. And so what happened is it went ahead and it created inside of one database as well as Maximo. So again, edit, publish, asset database, that's what we're calling it. And it used that logic to generate that next available key. So this right here, we'll just kind of look at this again, right? It ends with the character 415. This asset ID has been generated now inside of GIS as well as Maximo. So we'll copy this right here. Real quickly, what I'll do is I'll just come back to this poll right here, right? This is that poll that I created, okay? Actually, I'll just back up real quick because I did an update as well. So there's my update, right? You can see my height has changed. The old value was 35. That new value was 45. I'm not going to go back to that ID, but I want to go back to the new one I created. So there's that update, which was that poll over here. Here's my create right here. If I just go ahead and click on this right here and trigger kind of the field to refresh, you can see that we've now written that asset ID back into the GIS. So that ID is common across Maximo, GIS, and ArcGIS Online at this point. And to reinforce that, what I want to do is I'm going to come over to Maximo, go into this asset view inside of Maximo. I'll just paste in this number right here. Oh, bear with me. Just paste that in, and we'll go to the specification. And there we go. There's that 45-foot Class 3 pole, wood material, creosote treatment. And again, I put in the W for wood inside of GIS. I put in CRE inside of GIS. It translated, it transformed that data on the fly during the synchronization process. All right, so we've gone through, at this point, we have gone through this workflow. We've shown you how things can be updated, created inside a collector, ArcGIS Online. Things going to go through, going to commit that back to Maximo. But again, we're going to be able to have full perspective into data integrity with our report. We saw the create, we saw the update. I had an orphan in there. I didn't take time to look at the orphan, but that exists as well. So again, you have full audit history knowledge of what's happening with your data. All right, so let's kind of wrap this up, okay? Let's go through the finishing touch here, and we'll look at what are our customers saying, right? We're working with over 45 customers around the world that are using our technology. We want to demonstrate and educate you and let you know that the positive things that they're saying about our product. First and foremost, we're talking about the City of Clearwater, which is an organization that had a homegrown integration synchronization process. There was multiple steps. One thing had to complete before the next thing had to complete. And what they have done, their IT staff, is they've spoken up and they said this commercial off-the-shelf product has made it easier for them to manage this complex integration, right? And you no longer need to stay on top of it and monitor and track it. They don't need to update their code or manage any code, maintain any code. We do that all for them, right? We support the latest version of their EAM. We support the latest version of the Esri, and this schedule that the synchronization process goes behind the scenes. Next is another water organization here in which they've seen immediate improvements in field crew productivity. This is something that, as an organization, we really, kind of caught off guard with, like what we were excited about, because there's other people beyond the Maximo and the GIS users that are benefiting from this, right? And what they're telling us and what we've seen through our surveys with our customers is that the field crew are realizing just as much benefit than other people, right? Because they're able to have access to this data faster in their hands with your mobile technologies as we're going and making sure that things are up to date. So it's fantastic that they're able to see cost and response time, which ultimately leads to customer satisfaction because they're able to make repairs quicker and track assets a lot quicker. So in closing, right, we kind of want to leave you with these three things. When we look at the benefits of using GeoWorx Sync to integrate your ArcGIS Online or perhaps even your GIS data with IBM Maximo, we want to reinforce three points here, and that's time and money. It really boils down to the time and money savings. How can we expedite and improve efficiency inside of your organization with something that is very low maintenance and very low overhead, okay, to manage? And GeoWorx Sync has been a proven technology. We've seen it very reliable. The second thing being data integrity, right? We want to help promote a level of confidence in your data, whether you're a Maximo user or a GIS user across your organization. Right? We want to make sure that people have high confidence in asset and work management data. And then lastly, it's a proven technology. It's a proven solution. As I stated, we've over 40 customers around the world using this. Over 15 of them are IBM customers, and over 75% of our new customers in 2016 are IBM customers. So We're continuing to see IBM folks using this. We support 7.5, 7.6 within Maximo. We support the latest and greatest from Esri. We support the 10.4. And with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to chat today and really hand it back to Lindsay for the closing.
Thanks, Sean. I also wanted to let you know that we'll be at DistribuTech this winter. So if you're planning to attend DistribuTech and you want to come see another demo or just talk through your issues with us, that'd be great. We're in the Esri booth, which is booth 1831. And also we'd encourage you to follow us on social media to see more case studies and view our website and things like that. And so we're going to go ahead and close with some time for question and answer. So if anybody has some questions, please type them in the Q&A section in the bottom left corner of your screen. And we did get a few through the presentation. So the first one I think Sean just answered. It was Esri 10.5 is about to come out. Will you support this new release? And yes, we will support that new release. We keep our technology up to date with the core vendors that we work with. Another one, does Sync support file geodatabases as a data source? Sean, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, thanks. Yep, so again, yes, absolutely, yes. We support file geodatabases. It would just basically use the configuration that's listed under the database connection, right? So absolutely.
Great, and another question, how long does it typically take to implement Sync?
Sure. So I guess the easy answer is that it varies, right? And the influencers that create the variation are really the number of assets that you may want to synchronize as well as the number of environments. We've achieved a proof of concept with customers in as little as 3 days, right? That's our typical proof of concept when we work with someone. So 3 days is something we can get you up and running with Sync at 3 asset types. But also a typical project that we work with, probably falls into the 3-4 month range, right? But again, the influencers that create the variation that could extend that out are the number of environments, the availability of your resources, and the number of asset types that are being considered for synchronization.
Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, I got one more here. Hold on. Can GeoWorx Sync consume Arc server feature services as well, or is it strictly ArcGIS Online hosted feature services?
Right. Yeah. So good question. So we absolutely support ArcGIS server feature services, right? So that would be feature service is published through ArcGIS server, which allows you to edit data. That's how we would leverage and basically read and write back into features. So we can certainly support ArcGIS server feature services, and we've done that with other organizations already.
Okay, and we also have, does Sync perform synchronization through the database or through the application?
So we do it through, if I can understand, we're using the APIs, right, to write Maximo Business Object, Arc Object to write into the database. Our application is basically communicating with those technologies, those APIs. We're writing it through that process. So is that correct estimate, or am I inaccurate in saying that?
Yep, that's right. So for Maximo, we do use business object, and then also for geodatabase, it is the geodatabase, we use the API, the Arc Object API, and then for ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Server, ArcGIS Portal type of updates, we do use the web service APIs that's provided by Esri as well. So we definitely do use all the standard APIs that are supported by the organizations, and we typically do not just go in and write to the database. We want to definitely go through the APIs as recommended.
Okay, and can you write a custom query or view in Maximo and sync it to a feature class in Esri?
Hey, this is Jeremy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you created a view object inside of Maximo, you could synchronize that. It has to be an object in Maximo. So as long as it's registered as an object in database configuration in Maximo, we can synchronize with it.
All right, well, unless anybody else has any questions, thank you very much for joining us and have a great day.